I find that many people still to this day, get confused or have a misunderstanding about what it is to be feminine. Is feminine wearing fake eyelashes on my live? Is feminine, really doting on ourselves and getting our nails done? No, that's not the whole breadth of the feminine. And so we really want to understand that when things are at a very surfacey level, we can get lost in the translation. We can have a misunderstanding about what it truly means to be in that energy, and therefore have beliefs or stereotypes associated with what it means to be that. Okay, so it's really important to understand that, because so much in our culture has been lost with the feminine. The colonizer mindset that has taken over the world is very much of the toxic masculine, divide and conquer, rape and pillage. It's just a very much take. And actually, the divine masculine is the giver, and the feminine is the receiver. And this is an overgeneralization, but just to give that dichotomy that it's opposite of what we tend to think it is. And many women are stuck in this overgiving nature because the toxic masculine is stuck in the overtaking. So it's really important to just understand at the very basics what is gone wrong in our thinking of what it means to be masculine and feminine. Therefore, everyone tends to get lost in what this means and then think that it means something that it doesn't. A woman isn't always in her feminine, right? We know that. And not all men associate with being in their masculine. We all have the inner masculine and feminine within us. And if we are in miscommunication within ourselves of how to utilize our masculine and feminine, or what it means to lean into our feminine, then we are going to block ourselves. And something that we talk about in the free 3-day training that's coming up the next week, that our inner masculine armors up and self-protects the feminine within us when it doesn't feel safe. And many of us have had experiences in our early childhood, men and women and all genders, where the feminine didn't feel safe, or the masculine thought that the feminine didn't feel safe and therefore armored up. And the problem with that is that later on in life, when we try to be in our authentic selves, when we try to shine in our gifts, when we try to be in our brilliance, there's something blocking us. And that is our masculine not allowing us to feel. Feeling is our superpower, and it is the strongest power of the feminine, to feel. And if we are blocking towards feeling because we don't trust ourselves that we can handle it, that we can move through it, we're literally blocking our feminine. But I wanted to go over really quickly the 13 archetypes of the feminine, because, like I said, we tend to get in that very surfacey thinking that the feminine means one thing. And it doesn't. It's multi-layered and it's multifaceted. And typically, right? We start with the mother, and this is Ceres, the archetype of Ceres. So looking at where Ceres is in your chart, this is something that we dive into in the 3-month training. Where Ceres is, she's so important. Pluto gets all the hype, right? But Ceres is actually a dwarf planet that is about the same importance as Pluto, okay? So, and when do you hear talk of her? Right? You know what I'm saying? So this is really important to look at. And she deals with abundance and loss, joy and grief. Becoming a mother, right? It's like what you gain is also what you have the potential to lose. And this plays into all types of giving birth and holding that energy for things to create through us. Okay, and then the maiden, the inner child, Artemis, looking at where Artemis is in your chart. And here's the deal. We have a tendency as a culture to amplify as the feminine this youthfulness, this youngness, and that's typically where we carry all of our wounds. So when, as a culture, we're amplifying this wounded part of us, this inner child part of us, and saying that that's the end-all be-all of the feminine, we're losing so much. We're losing the whole breadth of the feminine. However, when we look at that inner child's maiden part of us, there's also power. And typically, because there's so much power in that, that's where we had some type of loss, where we didn't feel like we had power when we were in our maidenhood. And so we go into that with this Artemis and bring in this play in this beautiful way that is very exciting for me to share with you in this 3-month journey. It's an honor. So the siren is one of my favorites, and we typically have a lot of shadow associated with the siren. The siren is Sedna. It's the part of us that we either self-betrayed or we felt betrayed as a younger person, and we really need to bring her back in and show her our love and bring the siren in. That's the throat chakra, a really important piece to this work, because so many feminines carry the witch wound associated with the throat chakra. It is the most popular thing that we clear and look at in one-on-one work. So we really dive into this in the 3-month journey. Then we have the crone, Hecate or Hecate, whoever you say her name. Super powerful. This is our inner crone. If we're not in communication with our inner crone, we are not going to be showing up as the wise beings that we are. So this is how, as a culture, when we're dissociating from our wanting to age or wanting to step into that crone archetype, we're dissociating from our own wisdom and our own inner truth and our own inner knowing and our own inner psychic. It's so vital to understand this connection between not wanting to age as a feminine and then therefore pushing away this inner wisdom, this inner crone. Super huge work, people. So I'm super excited to dive into it. The Passionista, this is Vesta. If you aren't in connection with your Vesta, you're missing out on where you burn your own fire bright, your own passion, your ability to hold space for your own creations and your own expression. And so this is a huge piece of looking at this and where Vesta is in your chart. The Innovator, Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom, but also she can be kind of cold and harsh. And so it's important to understand her in our chart and understand where we can get into seeing the bigger picture and seeing ahead, but maybe disconnecting with the present. And so activating her wisdom in our chart is so important. Then the Queen, Juno, one of my favorites. Juno is our ability to hold our own head high and know that we deserve an equal balanced partnership and the devotion to that piece of our life that is bigger than us. So a relationship is not just, two people coming together. It's also the creation of this thing that's bigger than what we can create on our individual self. So it's that king and queen energy. And if we're not holding our heads high in our queendom, we are not going to attract our king, right? So it's really that importance of reciprocity and knowing how to hold our own head high and how this interprets to your birth chart. If it's in one of the houses of your work, it's also important for you to show up as that in your work. If it's in one of your houses that has to do with creativity, it's so important for you to show up in that co-creation with the universe in your creativity, okay? The Muse, Hathor, we look at Hathor in your chart and this magnetic force that you carry that is just beyond the 3D realm. It's this magic maker. And so tapping into her wisdom and her energy and her magic is so important. Medusa, the shapeshifter, this piece is probably my favorite, the Medusa energy in your chart. Medusa, if you don't know that mythology, it's a really interesting one. And the shapeshifter energy on its own has to do with this. It is a wounded part of the feminine that needs our healing and our attention. And when we heal it, we can use the shape-shifting energy to our own benefits. And anybody who, has any type of relationship to their feminine knows that there is a shape-shifting energy to the feminine. You can look one day and look at someone and see something, and the next day see something totally different. And this all has to do with our energy, and our energy is our currency. So learning about the shape-shifter in your chart is so fun. The healer, Chariklo. Chariklo is the wife of Chiron. And of course, behind every wise centaur, there is a wise woman centaur. woman being, feminine being. And Terraclo is that. Terraclo is the healer. She embodies grace and magic, and she holds sacred space for herself and others. And so looking at where she is in your chart can show you where to tap into your healer, your inner healer for yourself and for others. And if you don't have a connection with her, she is the one within ourselves that can heal all ailments just by her trust and her knowing. So the Destroyer, Aries, another one of my favorites. All of these are my favorites. Aries is the very active, excuse me, we don't hear a lot about her, but she's very active in the sky right now as she is squaring Pluto. She moves very slow, and she is the destroyer energy. When something is flawed, she will destroy it. So it's not that the destruction is it's really interesting. The destruction is not really the action. The destruction is the seeing where the cracks are in things and kind of shaking it up. Seeing where things are flawed and not working right, and so therefore it needs to totally implode. And so wherever she is in your chart, and she moves really slow, so but she shows us where things need to be shaken up in order for, it's kind of like the Tower card type energy. The story about her is that she throws the golden apple to these goddesses at a party and says, it's for the most beautiful one of you. And so they're all fighting over it's like the pecking order. They're all fighting over the apple, and she's just laughing because that is what inevitably ends up causing the destruction of the gods and goddesses of Rome. So of that time period. So it's really important to understand her about discord and chaos, and really she just shows us like where things aren't working correctly and need our attention. Okay, and then the sexual priestess, Black Moon Lilith, really, really vital for us to understand her in our chart for men and women, because if you are pushing away this part of yourself, this sexual priestess part of yourself, this sacred sexuality, you're not connecting with your chi. So much of our chi is our sexual energy. Sexual energy is just an expression of our chi. So if we are cut off from that, we're cut off from a big piece of understanding our own energy. And there's something about this creation force, this life force, because that is how life is created. And, I don't know if you've ever followed Sabone Fusome. She was an amazing, amazing healer from a tribe in Africa. I don't want to say the tribe around Dogon tribe. I don't know if that's right. But basically she'd say when a woman was pregnant, she'd sing a certain song, and the song would continue to be sung to that baby after that baby was born. And this is so much of like the sexual energy. It's like there is this this sound of sexuality that is continued into our living everyday lives. And if we're disconnected to that song, we're disconnected to our truth. So Black Moon Lilith shows us sometimes our shadow around being in our full sexual selves, and knowing her in your chart is going to be so important to you knowing your energy and your ultimate truth, your ultimate song. So yeah, that's a huge part of this work together. And finally, the alchemist, Persephone. Persephone was the one that was abducted to the underworld, and she lives inside each and every one of us, where we've had the dark night of the soul, having to walk through the underworld, having to lose at each one of the gates, losing something that we feel like we need, that we feel like we can't live without, and having to go through that loss and kind of just be confronted with our souls. That's all we're left with is our soul. And through that experience, we become the alchemist, because we alchemize all the pain and all the suffering of loss into our soul's truth and our soul's purpose. So this is feminine leadership. This is using the astrology and the archetypes for your success in your business, in your relationships, in your life. And if it interests you, the sign up for the free intro is in my profile. I'm so excited to offer you this. It comes from a force bigger than me, and I'm so excited to be a part of it as a facilitator of this work. And the most important thing for you to know is that these 13 archetypes are all not roses and fake eyelashes. This is the deepest part of our work, that when we learn to alchemize, when we learn to embody, when we learn to accept, we shine brighter than we ever thought we could.